You're on, they say. You're on. You are on. All right. This is April 6th, the April 6th edition with Scott Lewis, the CEO and editor in chief of Voice San Diego. Your April 6th edition of This is Fine. It's fine. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. I was just got off a call with sports radio, Darren Smith at Extra, at the, sorry. Darren Smith's show on Extra 1360, and a great discussion with him about sports. There are no sports, so they have me on. You can kind of hear it. It's like, oh, it used to be if there was ever a team trying to build a stadium in town, that's when they called me. And now when there's no sports, that's when they'll call me. So I'll take it. I love sports radio. Darren Smith, by the way, is a wonderful interviewer, one of the best interviewers in town. I highly recommend the show at noon. Always really in-depth interviews, and he has a way of asking questions. I think is just really great. So I did sports radio. I'm the guy you call when there's no sports. I love it. I do PE with my kids because I'm very obviously athletic. Today, speaking of which, first day of school, virtual school at San Diego Unified School District. That's going really well. No problems there. I've been working, so I let Ashley handle that. She's doing very well. She's a very good teacher and worker at the same time. This is just crazy. I don't know how we expect kids not to lose a lot of momentum. I think they're getting a different education in a way. You know, they'll always remember this type of thing. They'll always remember these moments. It'll be a lesson in resilience and getting along with your siblings. But boy, it's weird. So I just wanted to make sure you saw this. This is the most important bit of news for the day. Just something I see a lot of confusion about. So I want you all to remember this very important fact. It's Monday. It is Monday. You got that? It's Monday in San Diego, California. That's what's happening now. So I was walking the kids and the dog the other day, and we came across this playground. It looks like a Mission Impossible kind of thing. Like you imagine like being a kid, like trying to get in and around all these little hazard rope things. What is going on here? I mean, I understand blocking off the parks. You don't want a bunch of kids playing on that, but somebody had a little fun with the caution tape, a little bit much. Then this image also got me from the weekend. It looks like a bunch of rebels declaring their intentions to separate from a country, and these are their demands, except for Nathan here. He's too chill. Otherwise, it's perfect. Everybody's like making their demands. They're firing things up. But Nathan's like, what? He's got his hands in his pocket. No militant rebel is going to have his hands in his pocket. I don't think. And so it's just a really weird time. I understand that. I kid the county people. So that was them giving their daily announcement. This one was about some state recognition they got to keep pursuing some of their efforts locally. They've secured more than 2,000 hotel rooms. We continue to monitor how many of those are being occupied. They're set aside for two purposes, of course. One is for people who test positive for COVID-19, but have no place safe to go to isolate themselves. And the other group are for people who are homeless or housing insecure, as it's called, and need a place to go while they're being tested or while they're at risk of getting COVID-19. We're following some of those people. Lisa Hallerstadt was out this weekend. Lisa Hallerstadt does a ton of work for us covering some of these homeless issues and such. She was out talking to some homeless people and about what they are dealing with. It is not pretty. It is scary. A lot of them are worried about things like basics, food. It used to be not that hard to get food necessarily if you're on the street, and it is not easy anymore. Okay, let's get right into our main bit of news for the day. We're talking about local governments. Remember, there's three areas of focus about this crisis for Voice of San Diego and how we're going at it, trying to understand it. There's the issue of the healthcare response and the biology of the virus. How far does it go? Do our healthcare workers have what they need? How is that going? Do they has it really overwhelmed our system? And what can you tell us about what's going to happen with the virus? The second, of course, is governments, how they are reacting. They're closing parks, and then also how they're being impacted and how they will react to that. So the idea intensely being how they're going to deal with major economic problems. Governments are essentially a fraction of the economy. And so if governments, if the economy collapses, craters really, then governments will follow. And so the question is, what are they going to have to do to decide? We've already seen some details now about how they're going to deal with it. And boy, it's going to be big and tough. And then the third area of focus is, of course, the economy. How are businesses dealing with it? How are all these different areas dealing with what seems like maybe the biggest fastest economic downturn we have ever even conceived of? And that goes back all the way down to the Depression. Of course, that was a sustained period. Hopefully we can react and recover a lot faster. So let's get right into that. We got the news on Friday that the city of San Diego, led by Mayor Kevin Faulconer, remember we're talking about the county. The county covers the whole region of San Diego and has a lot of responsibilities with public health and with the sort of soft issues of food assistance, of public health, of these things you don't necessarily see, but they're a major part of our life. The city deals with things you usually come in contact with: the roads, the firefighters, the police, the libraries, the rec centers, all of those things. The city of San Diego, led by Mayor Kevin Faulconer, told several hundred city employees on Friday that they were not going to be paid for work on Monday unless they took leave. Now, there's the leave you can take if you're worried about getting COVID-19, or if you have it, or if you have symptoms, and that's the new federal law. But there's also leave that you have accrued as an employee for vacations and other things. And so he said basically we think it's about 700 city employees, mostly from parks and rec and libraries, that unless you've been reassigned to help with some of these things like transforming the convention center into a homeless shelter, unless you're working on that, or you're a neighborhood compliance person, guarding a park or something like that, you will not get paid for today. Now, that is what is known as a furlough. Remember, there's layoffs where you literally lose your job, and furloughs where you don't lose your job, but you don't get paid. And a lot of people are experiencing some version of that. If there's, layoffs have the advantage for people who get laid off. They can go on unemployment and other things like that. Furloughs have the advantage of that you still technically have a job. There is no official policy, though, at the city for furloughs. So they kind of just said, we can do this. And the employees union, led by the Municipal Employees Association, the largest of the city unions, there's a bunch of different unions that represent city employees. There's the firefighters, the police, there's the blue-collar workers that work for the AFSCME, American Federation of State, Municipal, and County Employees. And then there's the MEA. MEA is a unique city employees union. If you work in the development services, giving out permits, or if you're librarian, these kinds of folks, you're probably a member of the Municipal Employees Association. That's led by Michael Zucchet, used to be a city councilman. So on Saturday afternoon, after they heard from hundreds of employees that they were told you're not going to get paid on Monday unless you take leave, they filed a grievance, and they wrote that the city may not, quote, lawfully use a furlough mechanism as a means to reduce its payroll in lieu of a layoff. The city would first have to come to an agreement with the union before it took such an action. And so there's a big fight. Now, look, this is a big deal, obviously, for the 700 or hundreds of employees that are affected by this. Excuse me. But it's also it's like the first tiny little wave of the tsunami that's coming. I mean, this is just the beginning of these incredible discussions we're going to see at all kinds of local governments about what's happening. A lot of local governments, like the city, are very dependent on things that have been just crushed by what's happened. So the hotel room taxes, for example, 10% of the city's revenue comes from hotel room taxes. So that's the 10.5% that people pay when they stay in hotels here. So you have a $100 bill, you pay $10.50 in addition to that to the city. That's a giant tax that they use to fund all kinds of things. That is gone. I mean, maybe it's a little bit. There's a few people staying. The county's rented some hotel rooms, those sorts of things. But it is basically zero. So it's gone from being a potential source of funding for all of these things we want to do to becoming just a zero on the balance sheet. And so the major decisions that the city is going to have to make are incredible. And so this is the first step. Basically, parks and rec and libraries are zeroed out. If you care about your local library, if you care about your rec center, if you care about your parks, I don't know when they're coming back. I don't know, not just because of social distancing guideline, but we have received no information from the mayor or from the city council about how they may prioritize those services. And that may just be the beginning. There was already a little bit of a skirmish that broke out about arts funding. The city pays arts commission members or hands out grants from its art commission of around $12 to $15 million a year. This is a long-standing thing. A lot of different agencies and nonprofits depend on this funding for all kinds of events and different experiences, and that is probably also in danger. City Councilman Chris Cake told us for our politics report that comes out every Saturday that this was probably something he and others were going to have to look at. The city raised more money and invested in things like enforcement of short-term vacation rental nuisances. All these kinds of things are just completely up in the air right now. And I don't know if this really gets the gravity of what's happening. You could cut all of these things and probably still have a giant problem. Now, compare that to the county. The county is a little bit different. The county gets most of its money from property taxes. And so property taxes are pretty stable. Now, there's some talk about letting people not pay, but about 30% of people have already paid. Another 30% are almost guaranteed to because of their installment plan. And so then you have another about 35% or more who are still waiting to pay. They're going to have to pay next week. And so we're wondering, will they pay? Will they be given, a break in paying? But every break that they get in paying means that the government that depends on that money, school districts, county, other places, they don't get that money. And so it causes this sort of railroad car derailment to cause consequences down the line. So bottom line is every local government's in trouble, and we are going to be there to investigate and explain what they're going to do to get out of it, how they're going to make these decisions, and make sure that they're having open discussions about it. I had a chance to talk with Barbara Bree and Todd Gloria. They're both, of course, running for mayor. Todd Gloria got first place in the primary. Barbara Bree got second. Obviously, the issues that they're talking about are just completely different right now. It used to be, what was it? The vacation rental. Remember scooters? Remember when people were like, "Oh man, there's scooters everywhere. They're a real pain." Can you imagine how much would we love to have Scooter World back in this land of Corona nightmares? So we're all just, it's just a really crazy moment. Let's have a bring back scooters a moment. That's when we know things will be back to normal, is when we're all fired up about scooters on the sidewalk. Okay, so I talked to Barbara Bree and Todd Gloria about whether the mayor was making the right decision with some of these employees. They didn't have exactly all the information about what was happening, but they did respond. Barbara Bree said, right now the mayor is offering people the opportunity to stay employed. As we know, thousands of San Diegans do not have a job right now. That was kind of a tough take, right? Like, what is your problem? Is what she's basically saying. You're keeping your job. Deal with it. We're gonna have to figure it out. And then I asked Todd Gloria. He doesn't sit on the city council. Barbara Bree does. She's actually head of the budget committee, which is going to have to meet at the end of this month. And she's determined. She said to make sure that people can weigh in on what's happening there. So I don't know how they're going to figure that out. Todd Gloria said, I don't know. I don't have the specific information about what's happening at the city, but I recognize this is really bad and there are going to be some difficult and unpopular decisions made. At the same time, we have to remind ourselves that this is a temporary situation and to make sure that we're not making permanent scars from what is a temporary situation. So the idea that you cut something so deeply that you can't actually get it back when it's time. A very interesting moment. The Municipal Employees Association, of course, has supported Todd Gloria in this race. Barbara Bree, that might help explain part of her sort of attention to that. Oh, I see everybody's chiming in. That's cool. I'll check out those questions and ideas as I can get to them. Andy Keats, he's writes the politics report with me. He's our senior investigative reporter. You might remember he's the guy who broke the story about SANDAG, the San Diego Association of Governments. How many of you all know what SANDAG is? I think if you follow me and Voice San Diego, you probably do. I often joke that if you know what SANDAG is, you know what Voice San Diego is. And if you don't know what SANDAG is, you probably don't. So let's change that a little bit. SANDAG is kind of like the UN of local governments in San Diego. Each city and the county have representatives that go and meet at SANDAG. SANDAG has kind of two main jobs. One is there's a 0.5-cent sales tax that you pay on everything you buy, except for some food and stuff like that. On everything you buy here, you buy a car, 0.5 cent per dollar that you spend on that car goes to SANDAG. And SANDAG uses that money, gets money from the state, and then gets money from the federal government, packages that all together, and uses that to build things like trolley stations, trolley tracks, highways, highway exchanges, all these things. It was that program that we discovered several years ago was wildly underperforming as far as bringing in the money that everybody promised it would bring in, and thus would be wildly underperforming in what it could deliver. And that was before the entire economy shut down. So Andy followed up on what the entire economy shutting down means for the San Diego Association of Governments. They had a budget. They were supposed to turn their budget in April 1st. And they're like, well, we could do that, but it's completely irrelevant now because the entire economy shut down. And so they said, as the board said, don't worry, incorporate as much of this information about what we know about the COVID-19 impact into your budget that you can. We'll deal with it then. The city of San Diego is also considering moving to quarterly budgets. Okay, the chief economist for the San Diego Association of Governments is a guy named Ray Major. And Ray Major said that they began, when this crisis started, doing a survey of the 100 top tax collectors in the region and the 100 largest employers. And they wanted to see how things were going so that they could project. And his early take was that if this program that funds transit and highways and such, if everything goes really well and we get back to an immediate recovery in mid-May or so, this is the optimistic one. If we all go back to work and everything starts working again in mid-May, that this program will lose $53 million. A more severe downturn and still immediate increase would mean that it lost $80 million. And then this week, a week after he made those projections, he said, nah, turns out those were really optimistic. He said the original, this is a quote from Ray Major, the original assumption was that everyone is quarantined for a little, then we go back. What does that going back look like? Are restaurants just going to rethink how things are going? Are they going to be able, is everybody going to just start going? That's what's, I think, the hardest bit about this week for me is like, I think it started to dawn on me that there's never going to be a moment where we all go back to the gym and we all go back to the bar and it's like walking into Cheers again and everybody cheers when you walk in and everybody's having these big parties, and it's summertime, and we're July 4th, and we're surfing, and we're excited about being back in the world. I feel like it's going to be such a gradual reintegration of normal life that it's just kind of hard to make predictions like this. So a really bearish take from Ray Major, the chief economist at the San Diego Association of Governments. Just again, a really tough pill to swallow about how things are going to work out, and some real difficult decisions that these governments have to make as they try to figure out how to prioritize what they can out of it. So a couple of other things we'll be watching on this front. Airport Authority. Airport Authority. You probably don't know what the Airport Authority is. The airport used to be part of the Port of San Diego, but then they split it off about 20 years ago, and they said it should be its own entity, and this new entity, which they ended up calling bizarrely the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority. So they had to throw regional in there for whatever reason. San Diego County Regional Airport Authority is its own entity now, and it had two purposes. One was to manage the airport, and two, it was to find out a new place to move the airport. Well, they didn't get that one done. That failed. So now they just manage the airport. They get their money not from us paying taxes necessarily. They get it from airlines who pay rental fees there, and then there's ticket taxes and fees. So sort of us, but the airlines pay. The airlines were paying a lot. Airlines were doing really well up until a couple months ago, and they were ready to help the airport authority do a complete rehabilitation, complete remodel, rebuild of Terminal 1. Terminal 1, okay, you remember Terminal 2 is real nice. Terminal 1 it's efficient if you get right to your plane, but it's not the nicest of public facilities in San Diego. So they say, we're going to redo Terminal 1. Giant project, just probably the most expensive public project in San Diego's history right now, underway. They had the money. They finally got the environmental permits. They finally got labor on board. They had a lot of trouble because all these other government agencies, the county, the city, all these places wanted them to do better about connecting transit to the airport. The trolley line goes right past the airport, but doesn't actually connect necessarily to the airport. And so they got everybody online. They checked every single box, and they're about to do it. And then COVID-19 happened. So we don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to keep doing this project? It's ready. It's like they got everything done. They got all the money lined up. They got everything ready. And then the world shut down. And so we're waiting to hear from them. Is that still going? What is up with that? So a big, 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 big thing to watch for that affects a lot of people's lives and a lot of the economy. And we're going to be watching for that. All right, I'm going to pull up some of your comments. John says, I'm impressed with the video feed here. Well, this is Casa Lewis, man. We've got the best internet possible, and we're doing a great job. Megan Wood in our shop's been hooking me up, trying to make these work. Thank you. Nancy Chase says, hello. Lisa gets a shout out. Lisa deserves it. She's been checking on the homeless. We've got a big story coming out, I think, on that. Homeless situation. Communism. Yeah, that's a problem. Hotels. Okay. Jeff Olson's got his public bank. So this is his idea that maybe some of these, hey guys, keep it down, okay? This is the idea that banks, the city has to borrow all this money to build things. Last year, the state legislature authorized these cities to create their own banks so they could borrow from, their own types of entities, and maybe pay less interest rates, stuff like that. So that's a fascinating concept. We'll see if it does take off. Barbara Bree, yes. Did I say something else? The same thing's done on me. Yeah, I mean, okay, how was Sandag created? Was it voted on? Great question. I love explaining things, turns out. Sandag was created by the state legislature. There are a lot of these metro area sort of agencies that do planning, regional transportation planning. And again, it seemed a little bit before the airport authority. I don't remember when, but the state legislature created the San Diego Association of Governments. And it was that law that was later changed a few years ago after our investigative reporting that ended up giving the city of San Diego a weighted vote on the board, which made the city of San Diego the most important or agency in the count on Sandag. And so they make a lot of those decisions. All right, 1980. Thank you, Mary. Comes in with the Sandag fact. Appreciate that. Yeah, 1980. It was again reformed 3 years ago with AB 805, which changed the makeup and gave the city such a big thing. Okay, she brings up 2018 AB 32. AB 32 was the one that it was AB 805. No, 30. You're thinking of 32, the climate change one, which is really important because that's the one that says that the county has to come up with a transportation plan that cuts greenhouse gases. And the Sandag was in charge of that, and Sandag failed year after year after year coming up with a plan to mitigate greenhouse gases. Most of our greenhouse gases come from people driving too far. So that's something that they're trying to wrestle with. Who knows? Maybe us working from home now, more remote work like that, actually changes some of that calculation for a while. I see a question. What's up with the Catamaran Hotel in Pacific Beach open for business? I don't know about that. That would be really interesting. The Catamaran is owned by Bill Evans, who has a reputation of trying to keep people employed during these periods. I think that's been his goal. I thought that the restaurant was closed at the Catamaran, but we did hear that a bunch of Mission Bay leasees, the people who lease a lot of those hotels and spots there, that's all city land, and so they lease it from the city. They did ask the city for some help with their leases because of the lost businesses, and so we're following that closely because we've been really watching SeaWorld. SeaWorld finally got its legs back a little bit after the Blackfish documentary devastated their business, and so Blackfish is so they've been building roller coaster. I'm sure you've seen that, and so we've been watching about whether they're going to be able to pull out of this or not. The SeaWorld pays the city. This is an interesting little fact. Pays the city based on how much it makes in revenue every year. So we were able to see how Blackfish affected the operations at SeaWorld easily because you could see how much rent they were paying the city. It's an algorithm based on how much revenue they make, and so you could actually track SeaWorld's performance that way. So there's a lot to watch for there. All right, I like to end these with. Oh wait, there was one other thing I wanted to share. I think is pretty. This is a graph that Andy did with his. No, that's not it. This is a graph that Andy Keats did with his story about retail and the projections of how things were going to go. Drugstores were doing well. Other grocery stores were doing well. But then the projections of what's happening in some of these other retail sectors are just horrifying. Yeah, not good. But we're going to keep following that as well. Finally, okay, here's another interesting question. CCI needs to postpone Comic-Con already, push it to next year and honor all these years' badges. Okay, so this is an interesting question. When we heard that the convention center, I still can't believe this. March 1st, the convention center was supposed to be the economic driver. They were going to raise the hotel room taxes, expand the convention center, and then they were going to use that money, the hotel room tax expansion, and invest that in expanding convention and in homeless services. Now, a month later, the convention center is being transformed into a homeless shelter directly. It's like they just skipped a step and just went with bidding that. But there's a question there about Comic-Con. So we checked, right when we heard that, we checked with Comic-Con and the Tourism Authority to see if Comic-Con was still going. They said yes. They said yes. There are a lot of summertime events that basically have nothing to lose to just sort of wait for a while and see if there's a way to pull it off or not. Maybe as other conventions cancel after that, they can push those along. There's a lot of questions about, what's the last possible moment? Obviously, they're going to try to push the cancellation of Comic-Con out to the last possible moment. I had a question on the sports radio today about when is sports ever going to get back? and I said, I don't know, because I think it has to get to the point where two things happen. One, we have so much testing that we can really see not only who has it and isolate and take care of them, but see who has had it and take care and make sure that they're okay. And so I think that there's going to be some real interesting moments along that line where, like they have in South Korea, where they're playing baseball, but there's no fans. And so I think there's going to be this, we're going to come to like a stasis with this disease. We're going to come to a moment where it's there. It's scary if you get it, but we have a way to react when somebody does get it. We practice different ways of doing our work, and we continue and do well. But we live with it in a different way, and that can only happen when there's pervasive when there's pervasive testing of both people who have it and people who have had it. Okay, this is a really interesting question from Mike. What's up, Mannion? Thanks for seeing what I do for my life. Mike Mannion says, any rumblings of construction projects moving from essential to non-essential? Right now, they're out and working. Seems like San Francisco's shutting down their workers. I haven't heard about San Francisco, but no. In fact, the city, one of the stories that are coming out in the next day or two, the city of San Diego is really intensely focusing on getting development projects approved and communicating to developers that you can do this online now. This is fascinating. They're communicating, and it seems like they have the ability now. They're going to stop making you walk downtown with those giant rolls of architectural drawings and get them approved. And they're promising now all online, 100% online approval of capability for all development projects. They not only are saying we're in business to build, we're going to make it easier. We're going to make it faster. Andy Keats doing that story, I think, for tomorrow or the next day. Really excited to see what he comes out with. But the BIA, the Building Industry Association, and others say not only are projects that are underway, but projects that are planned or coming are also okay. So, I did hear that there might be some rumblings in the Bay Area about shutting down development, but it's not here yet. There is in fact, the opposite emphasis that if we're ever going to get back going as an economy, then that's one of the fundamental areas we can make sure it gets going and approved. So, good point about treatment. Jeff Olson points out there are other big summer things, not just Comic-Con, Pride Festival, book festival, and Liberty Station. I think he means there's a bunch of different ones. We've been talking about our own event, October 3rd, PolitiFest. This was a big deal for us. We were very excited to get that going for the year. It's going to be a major event for us, probably our biggest ever, and seems like a really weird time to invite speakers to an event, stuff like that. So I think that a lot of these places are gonna make decisions in the next couple of weeks. Okay, well, I'd like to leave these discussions on a little bit of a more positive note, or just a way to think about things. My kids are great. They've been doing really well. There's a lot of things to process. I think that the way I've been trying to make it sense of it with them is that it's just a really weird time, and we got to take care of each other. We got to communicate, and I think broader, that's something we always got to be telling each other, is that, like, this is probably going to go to a darker place in the next couple of weeks. We're going to get over the novelty of this. We're going to get over. We're going to head down to a more restless state, I think. And I think there's a lot of people worried about that. The county of San Diego put out a thing on the weekend, it was Friday or Saturday, saying, "Will you take the pledge to stay in, and agree?" Well, the rule, there's like $1,000 fine right now. I think, like, the pledge is set, man. Like, but I think what they're trying to do is create a social acceptance of the stay-at-home order that can maybe last longer into this thing, because people are going to start getting restless. I mean, I was trying to picture when they might open the parks and the beaches. Well, that's really hard. That's going to be really hard for them to do, because how are they going to open up a park or a beach without it just getting like July 4th times 4? I mean, it's going to be just banana. All this pent up attention and interest in going to these places is going to really explode. So they're going to have to be really ready, and then we're going to have to get to a point where the virus is not coming back and spreading out. So my point is like, let's just settle in, keep our expectations for us and for our kids, manage them. I think we're learning a lot. A question just came in. Can't wait to see how everyone feels about distance learning. I think we're going to learn a lot about what can and can't be done. We might emerge from this with a way of understanding a hybrid model where you can work on a couple of things remotely, but there's a real difference between people who want to get their degrees online and are motivated to do that, and kids who are required to do it or sometimes mandated to do it. And so I don't know how that's going to work out, but I do think that we're going to emerge understanding exactly our capabilities about working from home, exactly our capabilities about teaching and learning from home. We're gonna completely switch the dynamics of what is able to happen remotely, like with this story about the city hall. Like, why are we making people walk downtown with giant architectural drawings and such to get their permits? Like, that was probably dumb to have been doing for a while. Like, maybe this crisis will sweep some of that away as well. And, maybe we will stumble onto something. Somebody just said a digital event for PolitiFest. Well, that's kind of what we're batting around. Like, maybe it's a week-long series of digital gatherings, of produced features, of videos, of all kinds of different ways to interact about the future. We picked a theme for PolitiFest already. It's called Pick Your Future. And so I think there's a tremendous amount of possibilities that we'll all learn from. So look, when the grind comes, and the grind's going to come, just remember, it's just like a lung workout or a marathon. Just don't think about the other side. Day by day, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, that you're eating as best you can, that you're getting as much fresh air as you can, that you're giving yourself a break, that you're not responsible to give your kids a perfect environment. You're just not. You're not responsible for making sure everything's wonderful. You are responsible to get through this and then rebuild when the time comes. And so keep yourself healthy until that time comes. And yeah, be involved. Follow Voice of San Diego. Our roles are to make sure that you, A, understand what's happening, that we make sense of what people say, and B, that we find out what people don't want to say. And we're hitting on all those fronts right now, whether it's homelessness or how people are going to learn from home, or how people are going to get their developments approved, or how the government's going to decide what services to cut or whatnot. And so get in there, follow this stuff directly with me. We're going to carry as much as we can through this. We made a decision. We're going to be relevant through this period. and that's the only way that I'm going to keep my 15 employees and others involved and get them through this and get myself through this too. So really appreciate everybody who's here with me and going through that with us, and stay safe, and I love you, and follow Voice of San Diego at voiceofsandiego.org.